1 year had passed since the Battle of Valora. The galaxy was different now. The Krath had retreated to their home systems, broken and afraid. The Valaran Empire still stood, but it was no longer the same. Old rules had been thrown away. Old beliefs had been shattered. And at the center of it all, something new was growing. The humans had risen. They were no longer refugees hiding in metal boxes. They were no longer workers fixing machines in dusty workshops. They had proven themselves in fire and blood, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. Nari stood in the great hall of the Imperial Palace. She was no longer wearing the clothes of a princess. She had given up her title 6 months ago. Now she wore simple armor, gray and practical, the kind that soldiers wore. At her side hung a blade, not a Starforged weapon, but a good human-made sword that Tay had given her. She was waiting for him. The hall was full of people. Valaran nobles mixed with human leaders. Soldiers from both species stood together, sharing stories of battles they had fought side by side. Children ran between the adults, laughing and playing, not caring about the differences that had once divided their parents. Elder Sue was there, standing near the front of the crowd. Her gray hair was pulled back, and she was smiling for the first time in years. The people of Sector 7 had become heroes. They were no longer poor refugees. They were the first humans to stand against the Krath. They were legends. A door opened at the far end of the hall. Tay walked in. He was different now. His hair was shorter, and there were new scars on his face. He walked with a slight limp, a gift from the battle on the Krath flagship. But his eyes were the same, dark and deep, full of quiet strength. The Starforged blade hung at his back. It no longer seemed out of place. It belonged to him now. It had always belonged to him. The crowd fell silent as he walked through the hall. People bowed their heads, Valorans and humans alike. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. He reached the center of the hall where Nari was waiting. For a moment, they just looked at each other. So much had happened. So much had changed. But some things stayed the same. You came, Nari said. I always come, Tay replied. She smiled. It was a real smile, not the empty one she used to wear. The council is waiting. They want to talk about the Alliance. About the future, Tay nodded. I know, but that can wait for a moment. He looked around the hall, at the faces watching him, at the hope in their eyes, at the world that had changed because a mechanic had picked up a sword. Do you know why I fought? He asked. Nari shook her head. Not for glory, not for power, not even for revenge. He turned back to her. I fought because I remembered something. Something my mother told me before she died. His voice grew soft. She said that every person has a light inside them. A small flame that the universe cannot put out. No matter how dark things get, no matter how much you suffer, that flame keeps burning. And if you protect it, if you feed it, if you refuse to let it die, it can change everything. He put his hand over his heart. I was broken for a long time. I lost that flame. I forgot what it meant to hope. But then I came to Sector 7. I saw humans who had nothing, who had lost everything. But they were still fighting, still trying, still hoping. He looked at Elder Sue. They reminded me that I was not alone, that my light was part of a bigger fire, and that together we could burn away any darkness. Elder Sue wiped tears from her eyes. Tay turned to face the crowd. Humans are not special because we are strong, he said. His voice carried through the hall like thunder. We are not special because we are smart or fast or powerful. We are special because we never give up. We break and we heal. We fall and we rise. We lose everything and we start again. He drew the Starforged blade. The metal sang, filling the hall with its pure, clear note. This sword chose me because I understood that truth. Not because of my blood or my rank, but because of what I had survived. Because of what I had become, he held the blade high. And now, I tell you this. The same strength that lives in me lives in all of you. Every human. Every person who has ever known pain and kept going. You do not need royal blood. You do not need ancient weapons. You need only one thing. He paused. The courage to refuse to stay broken. The hall erupted in cheers. Humans and Valorans shouted together, their voices mixing into a single roar. The sound shook the walls and rose up to the sky. Nari stepped forward. The crowd grew quiet again. When I first met Tay, she said, I thought he was just a commoner. A nobody. A human working in a dusty workshop, fixing machines that barely mattered. She looked at him. I was wrong. He is not a commoner. He is not a nobody. He is humanity. Every broken heart. Every lost dream. Every impossible hope. She drew her own sword and held it up beside his, and I am proud to stand beside him. Tay smiled. It was the first real smile Nari had ever seen on his face. The war is not over, he said. The Krath will return. Other enemies will rise. The darkness never truly goes away. He lowered his blade. But neither do we. He looked at the humans and Valorans gathered before him. At the children who would grow up in a new world. At the elders who had lived to see things they never thought possible. Today, we are not just two species standing in one hall. Today, we are something more. We are the beginning of a new age. An age where strength is not measured by blood, but by heart. Where worth is not given, but earned. Where anyone can rise from the ashes and become something great. He sheathed the star-forged blade. This is the truth that I fought for. This is the truth that humans have always known. And now, it is a truth that the whole galaxy will learn. He took Nari's hand. We are not the end, he said. We are the beginning. Outside the palace, the sun was rising. Its light spread across the city, touching the buildings and streets and faces of the people who had survived. It was a new day. A new world. In the refugee district of Sector 7, a young boy sat outside his metal home. He was small and thin, with dirty clothes and hungry eyes. He had lost his parents in the war. He had nothing, but he was holding something in his hand. A small piece of metal that he had found in the workshop. It was not special. It was just scrap. But to him, it was everything. He looked up at the sky, where the light was growing brighter. One day, he whispered, I will be like him. And somewhere in the palace, Tay felt something. A small pull at his heart. A feeling that the story was not ending. It was just beginning. He smiled and looked out the window at the new dawn. Humanity had risen, and they were just getting started. 6 months passed. Princess Nari returned to the heart of the Valoran Empire. She walked through the golden halls of her father's palace. She sat in meetings with generals and admirals. She listened to reports about the war against the Krath. The news was bad. The enemy was advancing on every front. 3 more star systems had fallen. Millions of Valorans had died or fled. The great empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was crumbling like sand in a storm. And all Nari could think about was the mechanic. She had not forgotten his words. She could not forget. Every night, she saw his face in her dreams. Every day, she heard his voice in her mind. The universe has its own rules. And sometimes, those rules surprise everyone. She had tried to tell her father about what she had seen. About the human who had wielded the star-forged blade. About what he had said about suffering and strength. Her father had laughed. Humans are insects, Emperor Hanul had said, waving his hand dismissively. They have nothing to teach us. Focus on your duties, daughter. Leave the dreaming to children. So Nari stayed silent. She did her duties. She attended ceremonies and signed documents and smiled empty smiles. But inside, she was waiting. She knew that something was coming. She could feel it in her bones. The attack came on a cold morning. The craft fleet appeared without warning. 1,000 ships, each one bigger than a mountain, each one carrying enough weapons to destroy a world. They had found the location of the capital planet. They had come to end the war once and for all. Sirens screamed across the city. People ran through the streets, crying and shouting. The sky turned dark as Krath. Ships blocked out the sun. Nari stood on the balcony of the palace and watched the end of her world begin. "Your Highness, we must go," shouted one of her guards. "The escape ships are waiting." But Nari did not move. She was looking at the sky. She was looking for something, and then she saw it. A small ship, tiny compared to the Krath monsters, flying straight toward the enemy fleet. It was old and battered, painted gray and black. It looked like a ship that a mechanic might use. Nari's heart stopped. "Tay," she whispered. The small ship flew into the middle of the Krath fleet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship opened, and a figure jumped out. Even from this distance, Nari could see the light. The blazing, blinding light of the star-forged blade. Tay fell through the sky like a meteor. He landed on the largest Krath ship and began to cut his way through. The blade in his hand sang its death song. Enemy soldiers fell before him like leaves in a hurricane. But he was not alone. From every corner of the city, humans appeared. They came from the factories and the warehouses and the hidden places where they had been waiting. They carried weapons, some high-tech, some simple, all deadly. And they moved with a purpose that Nari had never seen before. They were not running. They were not hiding. They were attacking. What is happening? Nari breathed. She did not know that for months, Tay had been traveling across the galaxy. He had gone to every human settlement. He had found the broken, the lost, the forgotten. And he had shown them what they could become. He had told them the same thing he had told her. That strength was not given. It was earned. That humanity was not weak. It was waiting. And now, the waiting was over. The humans fought like demons. They climbed onto Krath ships and planted bombs. They flew stolen fighters into enemy weapons and destroyed them. They died by the hundreds, but for every one that fell, 2 more took their place. Nari watched in shock as a group of human fighters took down a Krath warship 10 times their size. They flew in perfect formation, each one knowing exactly what to do, each one willing to give their life for the others. "They are insane," said a Valoran general who was standing nearby. "They cannot win. There are too many Krath." But Nari shook her head. She understood now. She finally understood. "They are not trying to win," she said. "They are trying to show us something." She turned to her guards. "Get my ship ready," she commanded. "I am going out there." "Your Highness, that is suicide." "No," Nari said. "That is leadership." She ran through the palace, grabbing a weapon from a fallen soldier. She reached her personal ship and flew it into the sky. Behind her, she heard her father's voice on the communication system, ordering her to return. She turned off the system. The battle was chaos. Fire and smoke filled the sky. Ships exploded left and right. The Krath were being pushed back slowly, painfully, but pushed back. The humans were making them pay for every inch. Nari flew toward the largest Krath ship, the one where Tay was fighting. She could see flashes of light through the holes he had cut in the hull. She could hear the song of the star-forged blade, even through the noise of the battle. She landed her ship on the deck and jumped out. Inside the Krath ship, it was like walking through a nightmare. Bodies lay everywhere. Krath soldiers cut down by a single blade. The walls were marked with burns and slashes. The air smelled like blood and smoke. Nari followed the trail of destruction. It led her to the heart of the ship, where the craft commander was waiting. The commander was a massive creature, 3 times the size of a human. Its skin was black and hard like armor. Its eyes glowed with red fire. In its hands, it held a weapon that pulsed with dark energy. And standing before it, alone, was Tay. He was wounded. His shirt was torn and red with blood. One of his arms hung at his side, broken. But he was still standing, still holding the sword, still fighting. "You cannot win, human," the craft commander growled. "You are one. We are millions. Your kind will be erased from the universe." Tay smiled. It was a tired smile, full of pain and determination. "You still do not understand," he said. "I am not one. I am humanity. Every person who has ever suffered and kept going. Every child who has lost everything and still found hope. Every broken soul who refused to stay broken." He raised the sword. "We have been waiting in the shadows for a long time. We have been watching, learning, growing, and now we are ready." The craft commander roared and charged. Nari screamed a warning, but she did not need to. Tay moved like lightning. He ducked under the commander's weapon, spun around its body, and drove the star-forged blade straight into its heart. The creature froze. Its eyes went wide. Dark blood spilled from its mouth. "How?" it whispered. "How can one human be so strong?" Tay pulled the blade free and stepped back. The commander fell to its knees, then collapsed on the floor. "Because," Tay said quietly, "I am not just one human. I carry the strength of every human who ever lived. Every parent who worked themselves to death for their children. Every soldier who gave their life for their friends. Every ordinary person who did extraordinary things when it mattered." He looked up at Nari, who was standing in the doorway. His eyes were tired but peaceful. "That is what your people never understood," he said. "We are not strong despite our suffering. We are strong because of it." Outside, the remaining craft ships were fleeing. The battle was won. Against all odds, against all logic, the humans had turned the tide. Nari walked toward Tay. She wanted to say something, but no words came. So she simply stood beside him, looking out at the burning sky. "You came back," she finally said. "I told you I would. I did not know if you would survive." Tay shrugged. "Neither did I, but that is not the point. The point is to try, to fight, to refuse to give up, no matter how dark things get." He turned to look at her. "That is what being human means. We do not always win. We do not always succeed. But we never, ever stop trying." Nari felt tears on her cheeks. This time, she did not try to hide them. "Teach me," she said. "Teach me to be like you." Tay shook his head. "I cannot teach you to be like me. You have to find your own path, your own suffering, your own strength. But I can show you where to start." He held out his hand. After a long moment, Nari took it and together, they walked out of the darkness and into the light. The night came slowly to Sector 7. The fires from the battle had been put out. The wounded had been treated. The dead had been covered with white cloth and carried to a quiet place at the edge of the settlement. 3 of Nari's guards had died. Captain Dory was alive, but badly hurt. He lay in one of the metal buildings, his shoulder wrapped in bandages, his face gray with pain. Nari sat beside him. She had not moved for hours. "Your Highness," Dory said weakly, "you should rest." "I cannot rest," Nari replied. Her voice was hollow. "Not until I understand." She kept seeing it in her mind. The moment Tay had picked up the sword, the light that had exploded from the blade, the way he had moved, faster than any warrior she had ever seen. It was impossible. The Starforged blade was sacred. It was one of the ancient weapons, forged in the heart of a dying star over 10,000 years ago. Only those with noble blood could wield it. Only those chosen by fate itself. And yet a human mechanic had held it. A commoner. A nobody. "Captain," she said quietly, "have you ever heard of a human wielding a star-forged weapon?" Dury shook his head slowly. "Never, Your Highness. It should not be possible. The blades reject all who are unworthy. They burn. They kill. I have seen men lose their hands simply for touching them." "Then how?" Dury was silent for a long moment. Then he said, Perhaps we do not know as much about humans as we thought." Nari stood up. Her body was tired, but her mind was on fire. She needed answers. She needed to understand. She needed to find Tay. She walked through the settlement alone. Her guards were dead or wounded. She had no protection. But somehow, she was not afraid. Something had changed inside her. Something had broken open. She found Tay sitting outside the workshop. He was alone, looking up at the stars. The Starforged blade lay across his knees. In the darkness, it looked like a piece of solid night. Nari stopped a few feet away from him. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Tay said, "You should not be out here alone, Princess." "I have questions," she replied. "I know. Will you answer them?" Tay turned his head to look at her. His face was half in shadow. His eyes reflected the starlight like mirrors. "Some of them?" he said. "Sit." Nari hesitated. Princesses did not sit on the ground. Princesses did not have conversations with commoners in the dark of night. But everything she thought she knew had been turned upside down. So she sat. The ground was cold and hard. The air smelled like smoke and dust. Above them, the stars burned like tiny fires scattered across a black cloth. "The sword," Nari said. "How did you do it?" Tay looked down at the blade. His hand moved slowly over the metal, tracing the ancient symbols. "When I was young," he began, "there was a war. Not the war with the Krath. A different war. Humans fighting humans. My family was caught in the middle. My mother, my father, my little sister." His voice was flat, like he was reading from a book. "They all died. I was the only one left. I was 7 years old." Nari felt something twist in her chest. She had never thought about human lives. She had never wondered about their pain, their loss, their stories. To her, they had always been just numbers. Just reports. Just lesser beings. "I am sorry," she said. The words felt strange in her mouth. Tay shrugged. "It was a long time ago. After that, I lived on the streets. I learned to survive. I learned to fight. I learned that the universe does not care about you unless you make it care." He lifted the sword and held it up to the starlight. "One day, when I was 15, I found a ship. It had crashed in a canyon far from any city. Inside the ship was a body. An alien. He was dying. He had wounds that I could not heal." Nari leaned forward. She was not breathing. "He told me things," Tay continued. "Things about the universe. About the old times. About the weapons that were forged in stars. He said that the blades did not care about blood or rank or title. They only cared about one thing." "What?" Nari whispered. "The soul." Tay lowered the sword and looked at her. He said that the blades chose those who had suffered. Those who had been broken and put themselves back together. Those who had walked through fire and come out the other side. Because only they understood what it meant to fight for something. Nari's eyes were wide. But that goes against everything we believe. The noble families, the royal blood, are just stories, Tay said. Stories that powerful people tell to stay powerful. The truth is simpler and harder. He stood up, and Nari rose with him. They faced each other in the darkness, princess and commoner, alien and human. Your empire is dying, Tay said. The Krath are winning because you have forgotten the truth. You think that blood makes you strong. You think that rank makes you worthy. But strength comes from somewhere else. It comes from loss, from pain, from refusing to give up when everything tells you to stop. His voice grew harder. Humans have been beaten down for centuries. We have lost our homes, our families, our hope. Your people call us weak. They call us lesser. But every time we fall, we get back up. Every time we break, we put ourselves together again. And we keep going. That is what makes us dangerous. Nari shook her head. One man with a sword cannot change the fate of an empire. No, Tay agreed. But one man can show the way. And once the way is shown, others will follow. He held out the star-forged blade. The metal caught the starlight and seemed to glow with an inner fire. This sword chose me because I have nothing left to lose. Because I have already died 1,000 times inside. Because I know what it feels like to stand alone against the darkness and refuse to fall. He looked into her eyes. Your noble warriors have never known real suffering. They train in beautiful halls. They eat fine food. They sleep in soft beds. They think they are strong because they have never been tested. But true strength is not given. It is earned. Through blood. Through tears. Through all the times you wanted to quit but did not. Nari felt tears in her eyes. She did not know why. She had never cried before. Princesses did not cry, but she was crying now. I did not know, she said. I did not understand. You were not supposed to, Tay replied. His voice softened. Your people built walls around their minds. They decided what was true and what was false, and they stopped asking questions. But the universe does not care about their decisions. The universe has its own rules. And sometimes, those rules surprise everyone. He put the sword back across his shoulder. Go back to your ship, princess. Go back to your empire. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them that humanity is not what they think. Tell them that we are rising. Slowly, quietly, but rising. He turned and began to walk away. Wait, Nari called out. He stopped but did not turn around. Will I see you again? There was a long pause. The wind blew through the settlement, carrying dust and memories. Yes, Tay said finally. When the darkness comes, and it will come, we will meet again. And on that day, you will have to choose which side you stand on. He walked into the night and disappeared. Nari stood alone under the stars, her heart full of something she could not name. Everything had changed. The world she knew was gone, and in its place was something new, something terrifying, something wonderful. For the first time in her life, she did not know what the future would bring. And for the first time in her life, she was not afraid. The ship came down from the sky like a falling star. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Princess Nari watched through the window as the clouds parted and the brown earth of the human world came into view. She had heard stories about this planet. Most of them were not kind. Your Highness, we will land in 5 minutes, said Captain Dury. He stood behind her with his hands folded. His silver armor caught the light from the screens around them. Nari nodded but did not turn around. She was thinking about why she had come here. The Valoran Empire needed allies. The war against the Krath was going badly, and her father, the Emperor, had sent her to visit the lesser species. Humans were one of them. The ship landed in what the humans called Sector 7. It was a refugee district. Nari had read the reports. After the Krath destroyed 3 human colonies, the survivors came here. They lived in metal boxes they called homes. They worked in factories. They fixed things. They survived. That was all humans seemed to do. Survive. Nari stepped off the ship with her guards around her. There were 6 of them. Each one was a trained warrior from the best families of the Empire. They wore armor made from starlight metal. Their weapons could cut through stone like water. The humans gathered to watch. They stood in small groups, whispering to each other. Nari looked at them and felt nothing special. They were small. Their skin came in different colors. Their eyes held no fire. They looked tired. "Princess Nari," said a human woman who came forward. She wore simple clothes and had gray in her hair. "I am Elder Su. Welcome to Sector 7. Nari smiled the way her mother had taught her. It was a smile that meant nothing. "Thank you for receiving me, Elder. I am here to see how humans live. The Empire wishes to understand its potential allies." Elder Su bowed her head. "We are honored. Please, let me show you our settlement." They walked through the dusty streets. Nari saw children playing with broken toys. She saw old men sitting outside their metal homes, staring at nothing. She saw women carrying water in plastic containers. Everything looked gray and sad. "This is our workshop," said Elder Su, pointing to a large building. "We repair ships and machines for trading vessels that pass through this sector." Nari looked at the building. It was nothing special, just metal walls and a flat roof. But as they walked closer, she heard sounds from inside. Hammering, welding, the noise of work. They entered the workshop. It was hot and full of smoke. Humans moved around like ants, working on different machines. Some were fixing engines. Others were welding broken parts. The air smelled like oil and metal. And then Nari saw him. He was working alone in a corner of the workshop. His back was turned to her. He had dark hair that fell over his forehead. His hands moved quickly, fixing something small and complicated. He wore simple clothes, a gray shirt and dark pants, both covered in grease. There was nothing special about him. He was just another human. Just another worker. Just another nobody. But for some reason, Nari could not look away. "Who is that?" she asked. Elder Su followed her eyes. "Ah, that is Tay. He is one of our best mechanics. He can fix anything, even things from alien ships that we have never seen before." Nari raised one eyebrow. "A talented commoner. How interesting." She said the words without thinking. To her, all humans were commoners. They had no royal blood. They had no empire. They had nothing but their small lives and their small hopes. She walked toward Tay. Her guards followed behind her. The other humans in the workshop stopped working and bowed their heads. But Tay did not turn around. He kept working on his machine as if the princess of the Valoran Empire was not standing right behind him. "Human," said Captain Dury in a sharp voice. "The princess is here. Show respect." Tay finally stopped working. He turned around slowly. His face was calm. His eyes were dark and deep, like pools of still water. He looked at Nari for a long moment, then gave a small bow. "Forgive me, princess," he said. His voice was quiet but clear. "I did not hear you come in." The work was loud. Nari studied him. Up close, she could see he was young, maybe in his mid-20s. He had a strong jaw and steady hands. There were scars on his fingers from years of work. But what caught her attention were his eyes. They did not look down like the other humans. They looked straight at her. "You are a mechanic," Nari said. It was not a question. "Yes, princess." "Elder Su says you can fix anything." Tay shrugged. "I try my best." Nari smiled that empty smile again. "A humble commoner. How charming." She expected him to look away. She expected him to blush or stammer. But Tay did none of these things. He simply nodded and said, "I am what I am, princess." Nothing more, nothing less. Something flickered in Nari's chest. She did not know what it was. Annoyance, perhaps. Or maybe something else. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not without fear. Not without wanting something. "You are strange for a human," she said. "And you are young for an empress," Tay replied. Captain Dury stepped forward, his hand on his weapon. "You dare speak to the princess like that?" But Nari raised her hand. "Peace, Captain. The human means no harm. He is simply honest." She looked at Tay one more time. There was something in his eyes that she could not understand. Something hidden. Something waiting. But she pushed the thought away. He was just a mechanic. Just a commoner. Just a human. Nothing more. "Continue your work," she said, turning away. "I have seen enough of this place." As she walked out of the workshop, she did not look back. She did not see Tay watching her leave. She did not see the way his hands had stopped shaking. She did not see the old scar on his palm, hidden under the grease and dirt. If she had looked, she might have asked questions. She might have learned the truth, but Princess Nari believed she already knew everything she needed to know about humans. She was wrong. Outside, the sun was setting. The sky turned orange and red, like fire burning at the edge of the world. Nari breathed in the dusty air and thought about her mission. She would write a report to her father. She would tell him that humans were weak and poor and broken. They were not worth the Empire's attention, but somewhere deep inside her, a small voice whispered that she was missing something, that there was more to this world than metal boxes and tired eyes, that there was more to that mechanic than grease and silence. She ignored the voice. She got back on her ship and prepared to leave. And as the ship rose into the sky, Tay stood outside the workshop, watching it go. His face showed nothing, but his heart was beating fast, because he knew that the princess would return, and when she did, everything would change. 3 days passed. Princess Nari stayed in the orbital station above the human world. She had no reason to return to Sector 7. Her work was done. Her report was written. She was ready to leave, but something kept her there. She told herself it was duty. The Empire needed more information. She told herself it was curiosity. Humans were strange creatures, and she wanted to understand them better. But deep down, she knew the truth. She kept thinking about the mechanic, about Tay. On the 4th day, she went back down. "Your Highness, is this wise?" asked Captain Dury as the ship descended through the clouds. "The humans have nothing more to show us." "I will decide what is wise, Captain," Nari said coldly. "Prepare the guards." They landed in the same place as before. The same dust. The same metal buildings. The same tired faces watching from the shadows. But this time, something felt different. The air was heavy. The people were scared. Elder Sue came running toward the ship. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. "Princess, thank the stars you have come back." Nari frowned. "What is wrong, Elder?" "Raiders," Sue gasped. "They came 2 days ago. They took our supplies. They killed 3 of our people. And they said they would return today for more." Nari felt a cold anger rise in her chest. Raiders were criminals who attacked small settlements. They had no honor. They had no mercy. And they had dared to attack a place that the princess of the Valoran Empire had visited. "How many?" she asked. "We do not know. Maybe 20. Maybe more. They have weapons. Energy blasters. Plasma swords. We cannot fight them." Captain Dury stepped forward. "Your Highness, we should leave. This is not our battle. These are just humans." Nari looked at him. Then she looked at the people of Sector 7. They were gathered in the center of the settlement. Children held their mothers' hands. Old men stood with whatever tools they could find. Women stood ready to fight with nothing but their bare fists. They were going to die. All of them. And they knew it, but they were not running. "We stay," Nari said. "Your Highness," I said, "we stay, Captain. The Empire does not abandon those under its protection." Duri's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Yes, Your Highness." They did not have to wait long. The raiders came from the east, riding on hoverbikes that kicked up clouds of dust. There were about 30 of them. They wore black armor and masks that hid their faces. Their weapons glowed with deadly light. The leader of the raiders jumped off his bike and walked toward the settlement. He was tall and broad, with arms covered in scars. He carried a massive energy axe on his back. Well, he said, his voice rough like broken glass. "The little princess came back. I heard there was Valoran royalty here." I did not believe it. Nari stood her ground. "Leave this place. These people are under the protection of the Valoran Empire." The raider laughed. It was an ugly sound. "The Empire? The Empire is dying, little princess. Everyone knows it. The Krath are eating you alive. In a few years, there will be no Empire left." He spat on the ground. "So why should I be scared of you?" Nari's guards drew their weapons. 6 warriors in starlight armor, each one trained since childhood to kill. They formed a line in front of the princess, ready to fight. The raider leader smiled. "Kill them all. Take the princess alive. She will fetch a good price." The battle began. Nari had seen her guards fight before. She knew how good they were. They moved like dancers, their blades cutting through the air with perfect grace. In the first 10 seconds, 5 raiders fell, but there were too many enemies. The raiders had plasma shields that blocked the guards' attacks. They had weapons that fired bursts of green energy. And they fought without honor, attacking from all sides, using the buildings for cover. One by one, Nari's guards began to fall. Captain Duri took a blast to his shoulder. He dropped to one knee, his face twisted in pain. Another guard was hit in the chest. She fell and did not get up. No, Nari whispered she had never felt fear before. Not real fear. She was a princess. She had always been protected. She had always been safe. But now, watching her guards die around her, she understood. She was going to die here. The raider leader walked toward her, stepping over the bodies of her fallen warriors. His axe glowed with red energy. His eyes were empty and cruel. "Time to go, princess," he said, and then something happened. A blade flew through the air and buried itself in the raider's shoulder. He screamed and stumbled back. Blood sprayed from the wound. Everyone turned to look. Tay stood at the edge of the battle. He had come from the workshop still wearing his work clothes. His hands were empty now. He had thrown the blade. "Leave her alone," he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. The raider leader pulled the blade from his shoulder and threw it aside. "Who are you? Another human worker? Another insect?" Tay did not answer. His eyes moved across the battlefield, taking in everything. The fallen guards, the wounded captain, the crying children hiding behind their mothers, the princess standing alone. And then his eyes found something else. Lying on the ground, near the body of a fallen guard, was a sword. But not just any sword. It was the Starforged blade, an ancient weapon that Captain Duri had carried as a symbol of his rank. It was said that the blade chose its master, that it would burn the hands of anyone unworthy. No commoner had ever held it, no human had ever touched it. Tay walked toward the blade. "What is he doing?" Nari whispered. The raider leader laughed. "Go ahead, human. Pick it up. It will burn your hand to ash." Tay reached the sword. He looked down at it. The metal was dark, like frozen night. Strange symbols covered the blade, glowing faintly with silver light. He reached. Down. His fingers wrapped around the hilt. And the sword exploded with light. Nari gasped. The raiders screamed and covered their eyes. The light was blinding, pure and white, like a star had been born in the middle of the battlefield. When the light faded, Tay was still standing. The sword was in his hand, and it was singing. That was the only word for it. The blade made a sound, a high, clear note that seemed to fill the entire world. The symbols on the metal blazed with silver fire. The sword had accepted him. Tay looked at the weapon in his hand. His face was still calm, but there was something new in his eyes now. Something old. Something powerful. The raider leader took a step back. For the first time, there was fear on his face. "Impossible," he said. "You're just a human. Just a commoner." "How?" Tay raised his head and looked at him. "I was never just a commoner," he said. And then he moved. Nari had seen warriors fight. She had seen the best soldiers of the Empire in training. She had watched battles from the safety of her ship, but she had never seen anything like this. Tay moved like water, like wind, like something that was not quite human. The sword in his hand sang as it cut through the air. Raiders fell before him like grass before a storm. 1, 2, 5, 10. They could not touch him. They could not even see him. He was everywhere and nowhere. A ghost made of light and steel. In less than a minute, it was over. The raider leader lay on the ground, his axe broken beside him. Tay stood over him. The Starforged blade pointed at his throat. "Leave this place," Tay said. "Never return." The raider leader scrambled to his feet and ran. His surviving men followed, their hoverbikes disappearing into the dust. Silence fell over Sector 7. Nari stared at Tay. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. Everything she thought she knew about humans, about commoners, about this quiet mechanic, all of it was wrong. "Who are you?" she whispered. Tay turned to look at her. The sword in his hand slowly stopped glowing. His eyes were dark and deep, full of secrets she could not begin to understand. He did not answer. He simply walked away, leaving the princess standing alone among the fallen. And for the first time in her life, Nari did not know what to think.